We like to think of science as our quest for the truth, right? It's this methodical, step-by-step process for figuring out the secrets of the universe, from tiny particles to the mind-bending vastness of space. We trust the scientific method, the peer-reviewed papers, and the experts who spend their entire lives expanding what we know. But what happens when that entire quest is built on a lie? What happens when the people we trust to find the truth are the ones faking it? Today, we're counting down the most shocking scientific discoveries that were actually elaborate fakes. We're talking about everything from a fossil that tricked the world's best scientists for decades, to a clean energy source that was nothing but hot air. These aren't just little mistakes or oops moments. These are full-blown hoaxes, deceptions, and delusions that sent shockwaves through the scientific community and fooled pretty much the entire planet. Section 1. The missing link that never was, Piltdown Man. Coming in at number 4 is a wild story of national pride, raw ambition, and a forgery so clever it derailed our understanding of human evolution for over 40 years. This is the story of the Piltdown Man. Back in 1912, an amateur archaeologist named Charles Dawson made a discovery that shook the world. He claimed that in a gravel pit in Piltdown, England, he'd found the fossilized remains of an unknown early human, the long-sought-after missing link between apes and people. The find, which they called Dawson's Dawn Man, was made up of a large, human-like skull and an ape-like jawbone. For the British scientific community, this was huge. At the time, all the big fossil discoveries were happening in places like France and Germany, and Britain was feeling a serious case of scientific FOMO. The Piltdown Man was exactly what they wanted, proof that the very first big-brained humans had come from right there in England. Dawson became a national hero. The British Museum proudly put the bones on display, and they even commissioned a painting of all the top scientists admiring their amazing find. But right from the start, there were red flags. The skull looked almost modern, but the jaw was undeniably primitive. It was a weird mashup that just didn't fit with other fossils being found. A few scientists tried to raise the alarm, but they were mostly ignored in all the patriotic excitement. The Piltdown Man was what everyone wanted to be true, so they made it true. And they got away with it for a shockingly long time. For 4 decades, Piltdown Man was gospel, appearing in textbooks and academic papers. It wasn't until the 1950s that new dating technology finally blew the whole thing wide open. Using fluorine tests, scientists realized the skull and jaw weren't even from the same time period. The skull was from a medieval human, maybe 600 years old, and the jaw belonged to a modern orangutan. The forger had stained the bones to make them look ancient, and had even filed down the teeth to look more human. The hoax was officially debunked. So who did it? All eyes turned to Charles Dawson, the guy who found it. In 2016, a forensic investigation confirmed that the forgery methods were the same across all the bone fragments, pointing to a single forger. And the evidence overwhelmingly points to Dawson himself. He was likely desperate for fame and a seat at the table with the scientific elite. He got what he wanted, but his legacy was built on a lie that stalled our understanding of our own origins for a generation. In Section 2, the energy revolution that wasn't cold fusion. At number 3, we have a story that promised to save the world with a source of clean, limitless energy that sounded way too good to be true. And well, it was. This is the cautionary tale of cold fusion. In March 1989, 2 chemists, Martin Fleischmann and Stanley Pons, held a press conference to announce something that would change history. They claimed they had achieved nuclear fusion, the same reaction that powers the sun, on a simple tabletop device. At room temperature. This was insane, because fusion normally requires temperatures of millions of degrees. And these guys said they'd done it in a jar of water with a special electrode. I mean, the implications were staggering. If this was real, it meant the end of fossil fuels, a solution to climate change, and an age of incredibly cheap energy. The news went viral. The public, governments, and scientists everywhere were absolutely captivated. But almost immediately, the cracks started to appear. The scientific community, after the initial excitement wore off, got very skeptical. The most important rule in science is that your experiment has to be reproducible. Labs all over the world scrambled to copy what Fleischmann and Pons had done, and almost none of them could. The few that reported any success later had to retract their findings, blaming things like bad equipment or contaminated samples. Fleischmann and Pons were accused of sloppy science and of rushing to the media before their work was properly checked by other experts. They were also super secretive about their exact methods, which just made it harder for anyone to verify their claims. When other physicists looked for the telltale signs of fusion, like neutrons, they found basically nothing, certainly not enough to explain the huge amounts of energy the pair said they were getting. Within about a year, the consensus was in: cold fusion was a bust. It was probably a mix of experimental error, wishful thinking, and misinterpreting the data. The whole affair is now a textbook example of what's called pathological science, where scientists want air results so badly that they lose their objectivity and start seeing things that aren't there. Even though it was thoroughly debunked, the idea never completely vanished. It still exists as a fringe science, a tantalizing what-if for some. But the 1989 announcement remains one of the biggest scientific faceplants of the 20th century, a big reminder that even brilliant scientists can be fooled by a promise that seems too good to be true. Now to Section 3, the pseudoscience of bumps on your head, phrenology. For our number 2 spot, we have a science that wasn't really a hoax, but a wildly popular and deeply flawed theory that had some terrifying consequences. Let's talk about phrenology, the belief that you could read a person's entire character just by feeling the bumps on their head. Developed in the 1790s by a German doctor named Franz Joseph Gall, phrenology was based on a simple idea that was profoundly wrong. Gall believed the brain wasn't one organ, but a bundle of about 27 different organs, each one controlling a personality trait, like cautiousness, benevolence, or the desire to fight. He thought that the more you used a trait, the bigger that part of your brain would get, creating a bump on your skull. So by measuring your head, a phrenologist could supposedly map out your entire personality. And for a while, phrenology was huge. In the 19th century, people in Europe and America were all about it. You'd go to a phrenologist for career advice, to see if you should marry someone, or even to figure out your own kids. It seemed so scientific, so forward-thinking. It promised a simple, physical key to the human mind. Honestly, what would you have thought back then? But the science was a complete house of cards. There was never any real evidence for it. Phrenologists couldn't even agree on where the different brain organs were, and their readings were often so vague they could mean anything. Most importantly, the basic idea was just wrong. The shape of your skull does not actually reflect the shape of your brain. The truly scary part of phrenology, though, was how it was used to justify hate. Phrenologists created charts that claimed to show the typical skulls of different races, which, surprise, surprise, always showed white Europeans as having skulls that indicated higher intelligence and better morals. It became a scientific excuse for racism and slavery. It was also used to push sexist stereotypes, with claims that the shape of female skulls proved they were better suited for life in the home. By the mid-1800s, real science started to push back, and hard. Researchers proved the brain works as a whole system, and the specific brain functions Gall described weren't located where he said they were. Phrenology was eventually thrown into the trash heap of pseudoscience, but its legacy is a chilling one. It's a powerful lesson in how easily a bad idea, when dressed up in the language of science, can be used to justify a very dark agenda. Our Section 4, the canals of Mars and the dream of alien life. And finally, at number 1, we have a discovery that wasn't a deliberate fake, but a massive case of collective delusion that made the world believe there was intelligent life on Mars. This is the incredible story of the Martian canals. It all started in 1877 when Mars made a close approach to Earth. An Italian astronomer named Giovanni Schiaparelli was looking at the red planet through his telescope and saw a network of long, straight lines crisscrossing the surface. He called them canali, which in Italian just means channels. But when his work got translated into English, canali became canals, a word that implies they were built by someone. That one little mistranslation lit a fire under a wealthy American astronomer named Percival Lowell. Lowell became completely obsessed with the idea that these were not natural formations. He believed they were massive, planet-wide irrigation systems built by an advanced Martian civilization to move water from the polar ice caps to their dying desert cities. From his personal observatory in Arizona, Lowell spent years mapping hundreds of these canals, complete with intersections he called oases. He wrote incredibly popular books and articles, painting this picture of a sophisticated, dying society on Mars. For millions of people, the canals weren't a theory. They were proof that we weren't alone in the universe. The only problem? Most other astronomers couldn't see them. A few claimed they could, but the vast majority just saw a blurry red disk with some dark spots. They argued the canals were just an optical illusion, a trick our brains play when trying to make sense of random patterns viewed from incredibly far away. People even did experiments showing that if you look at random dots from a distance, your brain will often connect them with imaginary lines. The debate raged for decades. But the final nail in the coffin for the Martian canals came with the space race. In 1965, the Mariner 4 spacecraft flew by Mars and sent back the first close-up photos of its surface. The pictures showed a cratered, dead world. There were no cities, no oases, and absolutely no canals. They had been an illusion the entire time. Lowell wasn't a fraud. He truly believed what he saw. His story is one of the greatest examples of confirmation bias, of how badly wanting to believe something can literally change what you see. The canals of Mars were born from a mistranslation and fueled by a romantic, captivating idea. It's a powerful reminder that even in science, seeing isn't always believing. So, from a faked fossil in an English field to imaginary canals on another planet, these stories show us that science is a human process. They show how ambition, hope, prejudice, and just plain error can lead us completely astray. But they also show us something incredibly important: the power of science to eventually correct itself. The takeaway here isn't that science is broken. It's that the process works. These fakes and massive mistakes were ultimately exposed, not by outsiders, but by scientists using better tools and asking tougher questions. It's a relentless process of testing and challenging ideas until only the truth is left standing. And that ultimately is why we can still trust the quest. What do you think is the most shocking scientific fake of all time? Let us know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this trip into the dark side of discovery, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that will make you question everything. Thanks for watching.